The ship Discovery floated in the dark of space above the planet Zeta 7. Below, clouds of green and blue swirled across the surface. The planet was new to human exploration, and the research team had much work to do. Commander Jake stood on the observation deck and looked down at the world below. His job was to study this planet and find out what lived there. But today, his mind was not just on the planet. He was thinking about his daughter, Emma, who was somewhere on the ship playing with toys or reading books. Emma was 8 years old. She had never left Earth before, and this was her first real adventure in space. The idea to bring Emma with him had not been popular with all the crew members. Some said that children should not travel on research vessels. But the Earth Federation had approved family research programs, and Jake had pushed hard for this chance. He wanted to share his work with his daughter. He wanted her to see the wonders of space with her own eyes. Emma was in her quarters when she got bored with her books. She had read the same stories 10 times each. She wanted something new to do. She knew her father was busy on the observation deck with his science equipment. Her mother, who usually managed the research schedules, had sent a message that she was working in the main laboratory. Emma was alone, and she did not like being alone. She left her quarters and walked through the corridors of the ship. The Discovery was large, but Emma had already learned most of the pathways. She walked past the crew quarters and the main kitchen. She passed the medical center and the communication room. But then she came to a section of the ship she had never explored before. A door marked Restricted Cargo Bay stood before her. Emma knew she was not supposed to go into restricted areas. Her father had told her many times. But the door was slightly open, and Emma was curious. She was 8 years old, and 8-year-old children are very curious. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. The cargo bay was cold and dark. Strange containers lined the walls. Some containers had lights that blinked red and green. Inside one of the containers, Emma heard a sound. It was a small sound, like an animal making a low cry. Emma walked closer. She wanted to see what was inside. Through the glass of one container, she saw something that made her eyes grow large. Inside the chamber was a creature unlike anything she had ever seen. It was small, perhaps the size of a large cat. Its fur was silver and shimmered like metal. Along its back and sides, patterns of light glowed blue and green. The creature had small, round ears and bright black eyes that looked directly at Emma. The creature made another sound. It was not a cry of danger. It was a sound that seemed to be calling to her. Emma felt something in her chest. She did not know what it was, but it made her want to help the creature. The animal was thin. It looked sad and frightened. Emma found a panel on the side of the container. She did not understand all the buttons and screens, but she could see that the creature needed water and food. The food compartment was nearly empty. Emma made a decision. She was going to take care of this creature. She went back to her quarters and took some of her dinner that she had not eaten. She brought fruit and bread and a bottle of water back to the cargo bay. She found a small opening in the container where waste could be removed. She placed the food and water through the opening. The creature approached the food slowly. Its small nose smelled the offering. Then it ate. It ate like it had not eaten for a long time. When the creature was finished, it looked at Emma again. The black eyes held something that looked like gratitude. Emma gave the creature a name. She called it Striker. Every day for the next week, Emma came to the cargo bay and brought food for Striker. She brought her breakfast. She brought snacks from the kitchen. She brought water in bottles and cups. Striker began to look stronger and healthier. The silver fur became brighter. The glow along its back became more vivid. Emma also began to talk to Striker. She told the creature about Earth. She told it about the oceans and mountains and forests. She told it about her school and her friends back home. She told it about how scared she felt sometimes in space and how lonely she felt when her father was busy with work. Striker listened. The creature would press its small body against the glass when Emma spoke. Its eyes never left her face. Sometimes the creature made gentle sounds like it was answering her. Emma felt like the creature understood every word. One day, Commander came to the cargo bay looking for equipment. He found his daughter sitting next to a containment chamber, talking to the creature inside. At first, he was angry. Emma had gone to a restricted area. She had broken the rules about the research specimens. But then he saw the expression on his daughter's face. He saw how the creature responded to her. The scientific data from the sensors showed something remarkable. When Emma was present, the creature's heart rate was calm. When she left, the creature became agitated. The bonding between them was real and strong. Jake made a decision that would change everything. He told Emma that she could visit Striker, but only under supervision. He told the crew that Emma's interactions with the creature were actually helping with the behavioral research. This was partially true, but Jake was really doing it because he saw how happy the creature made his daughter and how the creature's presence made Emma happy in return. As evening came and Emma sat by Stryker's chamber with her hand pressed against the glass, something was beginning, something neither of them understood. A bond was forming that would prove stronger than any rule the galaxy could make. The ship floated on through space. The crew continued their research on the planet below, but inside the cargo bay, a child and a creature had found something precious to each other. They did not know that in a few days they would arrive. They did not know that the rules of the galaxy would try to pull them apart. For now, there was only this moment, and the quiet joy of two lonely beings who had found each other. The distress signal came in at 600 hours. Commander was reading reports in his office when the alarm sounded. The diplomatic vessel had sent an emergency request. A critical medical situation required immediate assistance. They held high rank in the Galactic Council, and ignoring their call was not an option. Jake ordered the ship to change course. Within 2 hours, the vessel had docked with the Discovery. There were tall beings with smooth blue skin and eyes that were completely black from edge to edge. They wore fine clothes made of materials that glowed with a soft white light. They moved with the confidence of species that had ruled much of the galaxy for thousands of years. The medical emergency turned out to be less serious than the initial message had suggested. A high-ranking diplomat had suffered a chest injury during a transport accident. The Discovery's medical equipment was advanced, and within an hour, the injured diplomat was resting comfortably in the medical center. But they did not leave. Instead, their commander requested a meeting with Commander, was older than the other. His skin was darker blue, and patterns of light moved across his face like slow-moving rivers of color. He moved slowly and carefully, as if he was thinking about every step. Entered the conference room where Jake waited. Captain Hayes, the Discovery's first officer, stood beside Jake. They sat down across from them. For a moment he said nothing. He simply looked at Jake with those completely black eyes. "I must inform you of something," said. His voice was smooth and calm. "During our time on your vessel, my medical team scanned your cargo bay as part of routine security. We found an unregistered life form." Jake's chest tightened. He knew exactly what was talking about. Continued. "According to Galactic Council Statute 7 Alpha, all non-human life forms must be registered and unregistered specimens must be reported to the Council and transferred to authorized research facilities. This statute has been in place for 10,000 years. It keeps order in the galaxy. It prevents dangerous creatures from being kept by untrained individuals." "The creature is not dangerous," Jake said. He tried to keep his voice steady. "We have had it under observation. It is calm and peaceful." "That may be true," replied. "But the creature is also unidentified. My database contains records of species from across the known galaxy. I have never seen this species before. That makes it extremely valuable to the Galactic Council's research division. The Council must know about new species. The Council must have custody of them. This is not a suggestion, Commander. This is law." Captain Hayes spoke up. "The Council has authority in this sector. We understand and respect the law. What do you need from us?" "The creature must be transferred immediately to the research facility on Meridian Prime Station," said. "My team will come to the cargo bay and collect it. The transfer will happen within the hour. Under no circumstances should any human come into contact with the creature during transport. There is research that shows such bonding can cause unpredictable responses in alien specimens. We cannot allow that." Jake wanted to protest. He wanted to tell about Emma and how important Stryker was to his daughter. But he knew it would not matter. The law was the law. The galaxy was built on order and rules and obedience to the Galactic Council. "We will cooperate," Jake heard himself say. The words came out like they were spoken by someone else. An hour later, Emma watched from a hidden observation point as they entered the cargo bay. She had been told to stay in her quarters, but she had not obeyed. She had to see what was happening to Stryker. They opened the container. Stryker saw Emma and made a sound that was different from any sound the creature had made before. It was a sound of distress. It was a call for help. Emma wanted to run to the container. She wanted to scream and fight. But she was only 8 years old and they were large and strong. A security officer gently took Emma's arm and led her away. She struggled and cried. She called out Stryker's name over and over. The last thing Emma saw was the creature being placed into a secure pod. The pod was made of thick metal and had no windows. Stryker could not see Emma. Emma could not see Stryker. The two beings who had found comfort in each other were being separated. They closed the pod and secured it. They moved the pod to their vessel. Within 30 minutes, the ship disengaged from the Discovery and jumped to hyperspace. The creature was gone. Emma was brought to the command center where her father waited. She had tears running down her cheeks. Her face was red from crying. When she saw Jake, she ran to him, but she did not embrace him. Instead, she hit his chest with her small fists. "You let them take Stryker," she said. Her voice was loud and full of anger. "You let them take him away. You said you would protect him. You said you would protect me. You lied." Jake tried to hold his daughter. He tried to explain about the rules and the law and the importance of following orders. He tried to tell her that Stryker would be cared for in the research facility. He tried to make her understand that they could not fight against the power of the Galactic Council. But Emma would not listen. She pulled away from her father. She looked at him with eyes full of hurt and disappointment. "I hate this place," Emma said. "I hate the rules, I hate the galaxy, and I hate that you chose their rules over Stryker." She ran from the command center. Jake stood alone, surrounded by his crew. All of them looked away from him. They all understood what he had done. He had followed the law. He had obeyed the rules, and in doing so, he had broken his daughter's heart. Emma did not sleep that night. She lay in her bed and stared at the ceiling of her quarters. Her mind was working fast, thinking and planning. Around her, the ship was quiet. Most of the crew was asleep. The corridors were empty. The time for action had come. Emma had watched her father work at the computer many times. She had seen the codes he typed. She had memorized the patterns of his fingers. She knew his security access code because she had written it down in her notebook a long time ago. She had known she might need it someday. Today was that day. She got out of bed and moved quietly through the ship. She went to the main computer terminal in the research laboratory. The lab was dark except for the glow of the screens. Emma sat in the chair where her father usually sat. Her feet did not touch the floor. She had to stretch on her toes to reach the keyboard. Her small hands typed the access code. The computer recognized the authorization. Screens lit up with information. Emma searched the navigation records. She found the ship's last transmission. The data showed that the transport pod was still in the departure bay of Meridian Prime Station. Stryker had not been moved yet. There was still time. Emma's heart beat fast. What she was about to do would break rules. What she was about to do would make her father angry. What she was about to do could put her in danger, but she did not care. Stryker was alone in a dark pod. Stryker was frightened. Stryker needed her. That was all that mattered. She moved through the corridors toward the hangar bay. She passed the quarters where the crew slept. She passed the maintenance rooms and the storage lockers. No one was awake. No one saw her moving through the darkness. The hangar bay had 3 small emergency shuttles. They were designed to carry 2 or 3 people and emergency supplies. Emma had watched her father pilot shuttles dozens of times. She had studied the controls when he was not paying attention. She understood the basics of launch and navigation. She entered the access code for the nearest shuttle. The door opened. She climbed inside and sealed the hatch behind her. Her small fingers moved over the console, activating the startup sequence. Lights came on inside the shuttle. The main engines hummed to life. On the bridge of the Discovery, alarms began to sound. Captain Hayes was on duty with a small night crew. The alarms woke her from her chair. She looked at the screens and could not believe what she was seeing. One of the emergency shuttles was preparing for launch. "Get me a lock on that shuttle," Captain Hayes commanded. "Find out who is piloting." A sensor officer worked quickly. The answer came back a moment later. The pilot's biological signature matched Emma. The 8-year-old daughter of Commander was stealing a shuttle. Captain Hayes made a decision. She activated the communication system. "All personnel to the bridge, priority alert. This is not a drill." Jake was in his quarters when the alarm sounded. He heard the announcement and ran to the bridge. When he arrived, he saw the data. His daughter had taken a shuttle. His daughter was heading toward Meridian Prime Station. "Can we stop her?" he asked, trying to keep his voice calm. "The shuttle has already disengaged from the hangar," Captain Hayes reported. "But it is heading into known space. We can launch a pursuit shuttle. We can catch her before she reaches the station." Jake made his choice without hesitation. "Launch pursuit immediately. I am going to pilot." Within minutes, Jake was in a shuttle heading after Emma. He could not believe how fast she was flying. His 8-year-old daughter was flying like she had been trained for years. But he understood. Love and desperation had made her bold. Love and desperation had given her strength she did not know she had. Emma saw her father's shuttle on her sensors. She knew he was chasing her. She did not feel afraid. She felt something else. She felt determined. She pushed the shuttle faster. She was going to reach Meridian Prime before anything could stop her. The station appeared on the screen ahead. It was large and complex, with docking ports and research facilities and places of business. Emma had studied the layout of the station using the ship's database. She knew where the quarantine section was. She knew where Stryker was being held. She guided the shuttle toward a docking port. The station sent messages asking for her identity and authorization. Emma did not answer. She simply continued toward the port. When the port saw that she was not stopping, it activated safety systems. But Emma's small shuttle was fast and maneuverable. She found a service entrance and docked there instead. She took a deep breath and opened the hatch. The station's corridor was empty. Lights blinked overhead. Emergency systems were activated because of her unauthorized docking, but Emma did not care. She ran toward the quarantine section. The doors to the section required security codes. Emma tried the codes she had seen in the database. Some did not work, but the third code worked. The doors opened. Alarms sounded throughout the section. Inside the quarantine area, containment chambers lined the walls. In one chamber, Emma saw Stryker. The creature was packing back and forth. When Stryker saw Emma, everything changed. The creature made a sound that was joyful and desperate. The creature pressed against the glass. Emma found the control panel. She did not understand all of the buttons and screens, but she understood enough. She found the release command. She pressed it. The chamber opened. Stryker burst out and ran directly to Emma. The creature's body shook with emotion. Emma wrapped her arms around the silver fur. She felt the warmth of the creature against her. She felt something else, too. She felt a connection that was deeper than words. She felt the bond between them grow stronger. Voices shouted from the corridor. Officers from the station were running toward the quarantine section. Emma knew she had to move. She and Stryker ran together, moving down corridors with the creature's natural speed and Emma's knowledge of the station's layout. Stryker moved like liquid silver, flowing around corners and jumping over obstacles. Emma followed close behind. The officers chased them, but Stryker's speed was greater than theirs. The bond between Emma and the creature gave them a unity of purpose. They moved like they were one being. They reached the docking port where Emma's shuttle was still waiting. Emma ran up the ramp with Stryker beside her. She sealed the hatch and activated the launch sequence. The shuttle lifted away from the station just as officers reached the docking platform. Jake's shuttle was still approaching. He saw his daughter's shuttle launching from the station. His voice came through the communication system. "Emma, respond. Emma, answer me." Emma's small voice came back. "I am here, Dad. I have Stryker. I am sorry, but I cannot leave him here. I cannot let them take him away from me." Jake looked at the data on his screen. His daughter was heading away from Meridian Prime at high speed. She was heading toward open space. She was heading toward the jump gate that would take them to the farthest regions of known space. He made the decision that would define the rest of his life. He changed his course to follow his daughter. He pushed the shuttle's engines to maximum. He made one final decision that bound him to Emma forever. Jake's shuttle jumped to hyperspace and left the known galaxy behind. Emma sat beside her father in the co-pilot seat with Stryker curled up in her lap. The creature slept, exhausted from the escape. Emma was also tired, but she did not sleep. She watched the stars pass through the window. Jake did not speak to his daughter. He did not know what to say. He had just the entire Galactic Council. He had stolen technology from the Discovery. He had become a criminal, but he had also saved his daughter. He had honored the bond between Emma and Stryker. He did not regret his choice. When they had traveled safely into the empty regions of space, Jake pulled up the historical database on the shuttle's computer. He wanted to understand what Stryker really was. The had called it a specimen, but Jake knew it was more than that. He had seen how Emma and Stryker moved together. He had seen the connection between them. There was something about this creature that science had not yet explained. He searched for creatures with silver fur. He searched for creatures with bioluminescent markings. He searched for creatures that bonded with humans. Most of the searches returned nothing. But then he found something in the oldest section of the database. There was a file dated over 200 years ago. The file had been discovered on a long-lost human colony world. The file contained records about creatures called. The records were old and written by hand. They told stories rather than giving scientific data. But the stories described creatures that sounded exactly like Stryker. Jake read aloud from the screen. "Thee is a rare creature. When it bonds with a human, the bond becomes unbreakable. The two beings share thoughts and feelings across great distances. The creature's abilities increase greatly. The creature's intelligence grows. The human bonded to also experiences changes. The two become more than separate beings. They become partners in ways that science cannot fully understand." Emma heard her father reading. She looked down at Stryker, who was still sleeping in her lap. The creature's fur rose and fell with each breath. Emma ran her fingers through the silver fur. It was softer than any material she had ever touched. Jake continued reading. "Thee is not a common animal. It is a guardian creature. Long ago, they served a purpose in the galaxy, but they from public existence for reasons that are not clear. Some records suggest that they were protectors. Some records suggest they were teachers. What is clear is that they bonded only with humans who possessed great courage and great love." Jake looked at his daughter. Emma had shown both courage and love. She had risked her life to save Stryker. She had the most powerful government in the galaxy to protect someone she cared about. She possessed exactly the qualities the ancient records described. Over the next several days, Stryker demonstrated abilities that shocked Jake. The creature could sense the location of objects that were hidden from sight. Stryker could navigate through the shuttle's corridors in complete darkness without making a single mistake. Stryker could anticipate dangers before they happened. Once, when a power fluctuation caused an electrical fire in the shuttle's engine room, Stryker sensed the danger before any alarm sounded. The creature guided Jake to the problem and helped him fix it. Jake ran scans on Stryker. The data was unlike anything in the scientific database. Stryker's neural patterns had synchronized with Emma's in a way that should not be possible. The two brains were communicating with each other constantly. They were not just bonded, they were becoming something new together. Back at Meridian Prime Station and throughout the Galactic Council, panic was growing. They had reported the theft. They had reported the escape of the creature. They had reported the behavior of Commander Jake. The Council was calling for action. The debate on the Council was intense. They wanted to send a military fleet to capture Emma and Stryker and bring them back for judgment. Other species agreed that order must be maintained. If a single human could defy the Council and escape, it would show weakness. It would encourage other species to break laws. But some Council members raised different concerns. The old records about them had become public. Scholars had studied ancient texts. They had found references to throughout the history of the galaxy. They had been mentioned as founders of the original Galactic Council. They had been mentioned as beings of great power. If the creature in Emma's possession was truly then its importance went far beyond a single research specimen. A bonded to a human could change everything. It could change the balance of power in the galaxy. The Council voted. The vote was close, but the majority decided on military action. They could not take the risk that a bonded to a human would shift the balance of power. They could not allow the precedent of a law being broken and the lawbreaker escaping. A military enforcement fleet was assembled. The fleet included warships capable of disabling any civilian vessel. The fleet included soldiers trained in capture operations. The fleet was given orders to retrieve both Emma and the creature within 72 hours. The fleet jumped to hyperspace on a course toward the region of space where Jake's shuttle had been detected. They were coming with overwhelming force. They were coming with the authority of the entire Galactic Council behind them. On the small shuttle, Jake received the message. The Council was sending a fleet to bring them in. Surrender was being demanded. Emma would be tried for theft and defiance of Council authority. Stryker would be taken to a research facility. The shuttle would be impounded. Jake looked at his daughter. Emma was holding Stryker and looking out the window at the stars. Her face was calm. She did not seem frightened. She seemed to be waiting for something. Stryker suddenly raised its head. The creature's body became rigid. The bioluminescent markings along its back began to glow brighter than ever before. The creature made a sound that was different from any sound it had made before. It was a sound of awakening. It was a sound of purpose. The Galactic Council enforcement fleet was 6 hours away when Stryker began to emit a frequency that no sensor in the galaxy had ever recorded before. The frequency was not a sound. it was something deeper. It was something that moved through space itself. The frequency reached every ship in the fleet. It reached the station at Meridian Prime. It reached the council chambers where the and other species debated what to do. The frequency carried information. It carried ancient knowledge that had been encoded in Stryker's genetic structure for thousands of years. On the bridge of the lead enforcement ship, alarms sounded. The sensors were receiving data from an unknown source. The data was overwhelming. It filled every screen with text and images and information that the crew could not process fast enough. Jake watched as Stryker stood in the center of the shuttle cabin. The creature's entire body glowed with light. The bioluminescent markings had spread across its skin like rivers of blue and green fire. Emma stood beside the creature. She was not frightened. She was calm. She was ready. Stryker's message went out across the galaxy in waves. The message contained the true history of The message contained the truth that the ancient records had hinted at but never fully explained. They were not a common species. They were the ancient guardians of the galaxy. They had established the original Galactic Council 10,000 years ago. They had helped young species learn how to cooperate and live together. They had brought order to chaos. But over time, they had decided that their job was finished. The galaxy no longer needed guardians. The galaxy needed to grow and develop on its own. They had withdrawn from public existence. They had hidden their true nature. They had become rare and small and quiet, but they had never disappeared completely. They had waited for the right moment. They had waited for a being who possessed enough courage and enough love to unlock the ancient knowledge. They had waited for someone like Emma. The frequency also contained information about the bonding ability. It explained that when a bonded with a human, something ancient was activated. It was not the human changing the creature. It was the creature unlocking potential that was already inside the human. The bonding brought out the very best of what humans could be. It brought out courage. It brought out compassion. It brought out the ability to see beyond rules and laws to the deeper truth of what was right. The frequency reached the council chambers. The and other species listened to the ancient voice of They heard the story of how they had tried to teach the galaxy about more than just order and rules. They had tried to teach about love. They had tried to teach about sacrifice. They had tried to teach that the bonds between beings were more important than any law. The council fell silent. The enforcement fleet stopped its approach. They realized that the creature they had tried to capture was not a simple specimen. It was something far greater. It was the voice of their past. It was the voice of their origins. On Meridian Prime Station, scholars and scientists and leaders of many different species listened to Stryker's frequency. They heard the truth. They understood that they had been following rules that did not contain the whole meaning of what they had intended. Statute 7 Alpha, the ancient rule that all creatures must be registered and controlled by the Council, had been created for a good reason. It had been created to bring order, but it had been misunderstood. It had been interpreted too rigidly. It had been used to take away freedom rather than to create safety. The frequency continued. It showed images of the galaxy's history. It showed civilizations that had risen and fallen. It showed the helping species overcome great challenges. But it also showed something else. It showed that the greatest challenges were overcome not by law and order alone, but by the bonds between individuals. It showed that love and sacrifice had changed the galaxy far more than any statute ever could. The enforcement fleet commander received a message from the council. The order to capture Emma and the creature was being canceled. Instead, the council was convening an emergency session. The session would address the fundamental laws that had governed the galaxy. On the small shuttle, Emma felt Stryker's power. She felt the ancient knowledge flowing through the creature. But she also felt something else. She felt Stryker's love for her. All of the creature's power, all of the ancient knowledge, all of the strength that came from being a guardian, it was all being used to protect her, to honor the bond they had formed. Emma placed her hand on Stryker's head. The creature leaned into her touch. In that moment, they were not just bonded. They were unified. They were one. The message that came from the council was not what Jake had expected. It was not a demand for surrender. It was a request for a meeting. The council wanted to speak with Emma. The council wanted to understand what had happened. The council wanted to hear the message of Jake guided the shuttle back toward Meridian Prime. As they approached, ships from many different species formed an escort. The escort was not hostile. It was respectful. It was honoring the shuttle and its occupants. On the station, the council chambers filled with representatives from every species in the known galaxy. Some species had never been in the same room together before. Some species had been enemies for centuries. But they all came to hear what the child and the creature had to say. Emma walked into the council chambers with Stryker beside her. The creature glowed with soft light. Emma was small compared to the tall beings around her. She was young compared to species that had existed for thousands of years. But she stood tall. She held her head high. She spoke in a clear, simple voice. She told them about Stryker. She told them how the creature had been lonely and frightened. She told them how she had shared food and water and kindness. She told them how Stryker had shared its trust and its love. She told them that the bond between them was stronger than any law. She said, "You made a rule that said creatures like Stryker must belong to the council, but Stryker does not belong to anyone. Stryker chose to be with me because I chose to be with Stryker. That is what love is. Love is a choice. It is not a rule. It is not something that can be controlled or contained." The council listened. In that moment, the frequency that Stryker had sent out became clear. It was not a command. It was a teaching. It was showing them that the galaxy had grown beyond the need for total control. The galaxy was ready for a new kind of order, an order that honored the bonds between individuals. The vote came after 6 hours of debate. The council voted to establish a new statute. The statute was called the Bonding Exemption Law. The law recognized that certain bonds between creatures and humans were sacred. Such bonds were not subject to council control. Such bonds were protected and honored by law. Emma became the youngest individual ever to change galactic law. She had not meant to be a hero. She had simply loved her creature. She had simply refused to accept that love was something that could be taken away by law. As the years passed, others began to emerge from hiding. They began to bond with humans and other species across the galaxy. Each bonding brought the same message. Each bonding showed that the galaxy was stronger when it honored love and individual choice alongside law and order. The Galactic Council did not disappear, but it changed. It became less about control and more about cooperation. Species that had followed rigid rules for centuries began to understand that there was room for both law and love. There was room for both order and freedom. Emma and Stryker stood on the observation deck of a new ship that had been named in honor of their journey. The ship was called the Guardian. It traveled the galaxy helping species understand the message that they had been trying to teach for 10,000 years. Emma was no longer 8 years old. She had grown, but her bond with Stryker had only grown stronger. The creature that had been alone in a quarantine chamber had become a symbol of hope for the entire galaxy. And in corners of space where young creatures were lonely and afraid, they sometimes sensed the message that Stryker had sent. They sensed that somewhere in the galaxy there was someone who would love them, someone who would fight for them, someone who would change the rules rather than let those they loved be taken away. That was the rule that changed everything. The rule that said no law is greater than the love between two beings. The rule that said a child and her creature could shake the foundations of galactic order. The rule that said the galaxy would be stronger when it honored both law and love. The rule that said never, ever block a human kid from their bonded creature. Stryker turned its head and looked directly at Jake. The creature's black eyes held intelligence and knowledge that had not been there before. In that moment, Jake understood. The creature was not just an animal. The creature was something far older. The creature was something far greater. And whatever the was, it had chosen Emma, and it was about to change everything. "I am with you," he said over the communication system. "I am always with you." He entered the navigation command. When Emma's shuttle jumped to hyperspace, Jake's shuttle jumped right behind it. The ship Discovery, the station, the rules of the galaxy, all of it fell away behind them. Commander Jake was now a fugitive. His daughter Emma was now a fugitive. Stryker, the creature, was now a fugitive. They were no longer part of the ordered galaxy. They were now part of something else. They were part of something that the rules could never contain. In the distance, the ship carried Stryker toward Meridian Prime. The creature pressed its body against the wall of the secure pod, trying to sense Emma across the emptiness of space. The bond between them was real and strong, and it had just been torn apart by the laws of a galaxy that did not understand the power of love.